Hey all, really quick shout out to Cyanlime before we get going. Dude made my pretty new background, which is very nice. Top bloke. Go check out his channel for some top quality gaming stuff if that's your bag. So, you can't be racist towards white people. Of course, yes, if you call a white person a cracker, or like the time I got called a convict by a very mad Indigenous fella simply for being near him when he was mad, that's definitively racist. So end off then. Yeah, nah mates. Let me try and explain what people mean, or should mean anyway, with this statement. You can't be racist to white people. I'm going to stick with that example from before, getting called a convict on the street. I won't lie, I was pretty young and he was an adult. It scared me. It was not cool. And yeah, he did throw a racially motivated slur at me. But after the episode, I went home to my family. I did my homework, I got a full feed, and the next day I went about seeing to my education, which led on to uni, which led on to my job, etc. The guy who was so concerned with the legal status of my apparent ancestors, though, has a statistically far greater chance of missing out on all those things. Despite the fact that our Racial Discrimination Act outlawed discriminatory practice against him in 1975, he is still far more likely to be facing a far greater uphill battle than I do or ever will. And the reason why is a thing we in sociology call institutional racism. Let me start with the caveat. Institutional racism does not need to be intentional to exist. An institution may have the best of intentions when it comes to supporting people and still meet the definition. The definition is the actions and policy of institutions that lead to disadvantage for racial groups. Like my mate from before, his people were explicitly singled out for cultural and eventual genetic obliteration. It's a very explicit and deliberate form of institutional racism. His people have since been left suffering social exclusion and poverty that is much worse than that experienced by mainstream Australia. And efforts to curb these realities have absolutely fallen short of the mark. This is largely an example of implicit institutional racism. Other examples from across the world are easy to find. Disparity in arrest and sentencing for African Americans generally is one example, and that includes that old and well-documented favourite, drug arrests and sentencing. These realities have big impacts too. The intergenerational trauma perpetuated by the social exclusion of Native Americans is just one of a great many documented examples. Institutional racism is therefore a very real and very serious fact of life in our societies at present, and it's something that needs serious attention. And it's that serious nature of this that leads to the idea that you can't be racist to white people. White people in Western society don't suffer from institutional racism. All the affirmative action in the world, so far anyway, has not led to white people being worse off because of our institutions. Quite the opposite. Racism then in the West is far less serious for white people. Any slur doesn't matter beyond a few hurt feelings. For a racial minority, though, it goes far beyond that. It speaks to their reality, which is the likelihood of a much tougher life than the rest of us will experience. So given all this, I can understand why that bloke was mad enough to call a stranger a convict. And as the recipient, I've got to say, I've come to understand why it matters a whole lot less than slurs I could have thrown at him in return. So yeah, definitively, you can be racist to white people, but in the West, it doesn't mean much. Is the statement that is the title of this video then inaccurate? Yeah. Unhelpful? Probably. The statement is an attempt to find traction for an important idea in a world in which many feel it is harder and harder to do so. In that goal, I do think it's missed the mark, and I certainly never use it. But if this was news to you, maybe in any future discussions where this is raised, you'll have a better idea of what someone who says it might be trying to get across. As always, thoughts, comments and corrections are always welcome. This has been Yeah Nah. Thanks for taking the time.